What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gojo with Mike Golick Jr. That is me. With me, as always, prescription sunglasses in tow, Brandon, Jarrell Newman. Brandon, what's going on?
Oh, happy day when Roman left. When Roman left. Okay. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great, man. Is this what happens when you go to open mic night?
Mike is referring to me stretching my stand-up muscles, but I did not tonight. I just saw a bunch of bad stand-up, which is common at an open mic night. Have you frequented any comedy clubs recently?
No, I have never really. I mean, I've been to comedy clubs before. Like, I've been to Second City in Chicago and some of the big ones, but I haven't frequented because that's like something you enjoy doing, right? Like, you are someone who has been on stage and done stand-up before and actually likes the craft.
Yes, I appreciate the craft, and I also like to get it butchered. I like the attempt. I like people to go up there with no punchlines. I like the one-liners. I just love it all. But it left a bad taste in my mouth, and it just inspired me to get up and write the shit myself, Mike. So February, I got 2 shows booked already. Come see me if you're in Sarasota. We'll talk about that later on in the podcast.
You got what? You have a goal for this year, though, right? 33 times on stage for 33 years.
33. I'm stepping into my Jesus year on 33rd February. I'm not going to say the date just yet, in case people are looking for my socials. But yes, we'll say happy birthday when it's time. But yes, Mike, big. I've probably been on stage total 33 times. Doing stand-up, period. So to do it all in 1 year is a big leap, but I think I'm ready. I've got enough positive comments on YouTube. I'm ready to do it.
I've been given this blessing by social media, so now I will take on the final boss of the video game, real life.
Real humans.
God, if the internet was preparation for human interaction, I would feel like going out in public would be so much more daunting. Like, imagine if talking to people in public was somehow worse than being on the internet.
It's just not, because people are just not as bold in person. But comedians are, which always makes it a little bit uncomfortable. I had an uncomfortable encounter with somebody that did stand up today. They said a lot of bad black jokes and they weren't, and then afterwards they pulled me aside and was like, hey, I didn't do any of the black jokes because I was scared of you. And I was just like, this isn't, you need to be outside a little bit more too.
Ooh, yeah, buddy, like, that doesn't mean what you think it means.
No. And I kind of threatened him. I was like, don't worry, I'll be back to hear him. You know what I'm saying?
It's like a subtle enough threat to where it's not actually like, but it's also, he definitely walked away from that interaction, I'd imagine, a little more uncomfortable than he came.
Yeah, he was like, I probably shouldn't have talked to that dude.
Well, it's also, I mean, again, if you're going to say that, I can't imagine he has had too many interactions with people that look like you.
Hey, based on a stand-up, he lost his virginity to a black woman, and he said he had to, I'm not going to get into it.
Oh, dear God.
Yeah. Let's not.
You know what? Unlike that guy's stand-up set, we had a great show for you guys today. It is the Divisional Round preview podcast here. As always, we appreciate anybody who downloads, subscribes, rates, reviews, leaves us a 5-star rating and a review, and checks out the podcast on YouTube as well under the DraftKings YouTube channel and the Gojo with Mike Golick Jr. tab here. We are excited. We're going to take a look at all 4 Divisional Round games this weekend. Fewer and fewer games means it's easier to take a look at all of them coming up. We've also got record-setting tenure at one university coming to an end, a 5-star flip, and a record being set in its own right that actually has a playoff link. How's that for a tease? But Brandon, in the meantime, some quick NFL news and notes before we get there. Since we are in the season where a lot of decisions are being made about coaching tenures for teams that are no longer in the playoffs, we did have some big-time names pop into the market. Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens, your Baltimore Ravens, actually stepped down. He had a meeting with John Harbaugh on the staff there and decided that it was time for him and the Ravens to part ways after his tenure there. He had spent 4 seasons in Baltimore. And obviously, Brandon, there was a lot of really good times for Greg Roman in their tenure. They became the only team to rush for 3,000 yards in a season and then did it in back-to-back seasons in both the years where Lamar Jackson was fully healthy. So there was all of that good, but we can go all the way back to I remember specifically the offseason when David Culley was hired by the Houston Texans a couple years ago, and everyone said the Baltimore Ravens need to upgrade at passing game coordinator, which was David Culley's job, who left for Houston. And it never really was replaced meaningfully and never really evolved meaningfully. And certainly you can point to injury at wide receiver and some of the misfortune they had there. Last couple of years where Lamar Jackson finished the year injured. But overall, Brandon, it just feels like, and I'd ask you as a Ravens fan, do you ever feel really like that part of their offense took the step forward that it needed to under Greg Roman?
I don't know who to blame, but no. It's like a long list of variables because now that the rumblings about Lamar Jackson and his dedication are out there, I don't want to believe it because he can't be that talented and gifted without the work as well. And I do think he puts in that work. But the wide receivers, Mike, like talk about Dak Prescott's receivers dropping balls. Lamar Jackson had so many drops for such a long time. And that's one of the reasons why I thought Hollywood Brown, it was easy to make that trade to get him up out of there because he was one of the main people dropping balls from Lamar Jackson. So between the wide receivers dropping the ball and Lamar Jackson not really being that comfortable and honestly, just not having a burner out there that can get behind the defense, I don't know who to blame. But yes, it's been stagnant. And people forget about how many yards passing that Lamar was able to make up, especially in that 2019 career. And how many didn't he lead the league in pass touchdowns?
Yes, it was sensational. His MVP season. Yes, they were as dynamic as any team out there, and certainly Lamar Jackson was a big part of that, but so was Greg Roman. And I saw RG3, who was in that quarterback room, said he might be the greatest run game, or one of the greatest run game tacticians I've ever been around. But he even said, who had been under the hood there, that the passing game hadn't materialized in the ways it needed to. And that felt obvious to everyone involved. And Brandon, you're 100% right. As we look at a lot of these hirings and firings that have gone on here, it's always hard for us on the outside to fully be able to assign blame or credit one way or another inside a lot of these offenses. We can see with Lamar Jackson, especially in the seasons where, as we talk a lot about the injuries for him that ended his season, which it's worth noting since they always get brought up. And I saw the guys on the Dan Le Batard show bring this up the other day. Lamar Jackson's injuries get brought up, and I think a lot of that is a connotation about his style of play, right? Big-time athlete, gets out in the open field. Both of those season-ending injuries took place in the pocket. One was on a hit that he couldn't see coming. The other was on a screen where he was backing up and a player landed on his ankle. So those were hits that every quarterback takes. And often we talk about the ones you can prepare yourself for the least inside the pocket because you've got less protection in there. And so I think that's just worth noting in its own regard in the conversation about Lamar Jackson and injury is those weren't him putting himself in harm's way on scrambles. Those weren't him putting himself in harm's way as a designed runner. Those were hits in the pocket that pretty much every quarterback take and just seem to be more bad luck plays than anything.
Yeah, and that's why I'm glad you brought that up because if you watch the Ravens play when Lamar Jackson is behind center, even when he is in the open field, like making moves and scrambling, Mike, it's like trying to tackle a fitted sheet. Like you can't get he knows how to fall better than most quarterbacks than you see. So I'm glad you brought that up, but there is a little bit too, especially back in the day, how light he was. And that's why we're all excited to how thick he got because he was getting his bones rattled on some of those hits because he just was a frail quarterback at that point in time.
Yeah, certainly a part of that. And again, the end sum is still he missed time. And so I get some of that being a concern, but I think the how matters. But when he was on the field and the rest of that roster was depleted, we saw him be able to make extracurricular plays. The special plays that I think separate the upper level of quarterbacks in this league, guys who can exist outside of the structure of the offense. And so this move is about showing, I think, really, and you heard in the press conference that they had here, Eric DaCosta, their GM, and some of their other front office about this story. And a lot of this was also them talking about the status of Lamar's contract, saying, we want Lamar here long-term. Lamar wants to be a Raven long-term. We're willing to do everything in our power to make sure that that happens. Everyone wants to be here. They went and I thought very much too late, but came out and had Lamar's back and said he was injured for a player that dynamic with that kind of injury. getting him back on the field would not have made sense there. Like, they said all the right things in this setting, even if some of it was too late. And then this move indicates that, and I think you brought up John Harbaugh said that Lamar Jackson was going to be involved in the process of picking the next coordinator. Yeah. These all sound like things you're trying to do to make the quarterback you want to be your franchise quarterback want to meet you at the table when it comes to negotiating a long-term deal here, because they know they can play the franchise tag game, but that hardly ends up ever being a good situation for anybody involved with the feelings that creates. And so this all does sound like them really extending the olive branch to their quarterback with some of the things they're doing move-wise.
Yeah, the same thing with the blame goes with the credit as well. And as long as that list of receipts of what Greg Roman has done in his career with Alex Smith in the AFC Championship and Colin Kaepernick and all the things he's done in the past, I feel like Lamar may have been slighted a little bit in that as well. Like, he is truly special, and at the time where he was succeeding, no one knew what to do with him. It's that part of the defensive scheme for the opposing team during halftime that I'm concerned with, when the Ravens usually get locked up in the third quarter completely, like damn near 0 points, and there's just something that they lean on when defending Lamar Jackson that seems to work. And there's been far and few between times where I've seen Lamar Jackson and that offense go out there and win the game when they needed to.
Yeah, I listen, ultimately, I just think with a player that special, you can't afford to let him walk out of the building. And even if you want to talk about getting assets back for him and things like that, it just ultimately seems like more trouble than it's worth for what you've already accomplished. Like, you got him at the back end of the first round. He wasn't even your first round pick that year. The other guy doesn't play for your team anymore. So
he's still playing in the playoffs too, though.
Yeah, he is. Hayden Hurst, proud Cincinnati Bengal. He got a helmet that matches the drapes.
Woo.
Yeah, I had to be very clear that I wasn't saying the carpet there.
Hey, but speaking of that, proud Gamecock.
Yes, I can say go Cox. So that was a move that I think the way it came about, especially J.K. Dobbins, their running back, being critical of the touches he got immediately after their postseason game. This wasn't just a Lamar Jackson and the passing game portion of this. This was now questions as year after year, the production kind of started to point the arrow down. This year, I think they ended up 19th in points per game in the NFL. So this was one of those things where it doesn't make Greg Roman a bad coordinator overall. It just means at this juncture with where they're at resource-wise, it was time for them, especially with the way the defense has come along on the other side, to try and make sure they've got something that can really take the next step and go over the top.
This may be me being a fanboy, but I think that Lamar Jackson could benefit from a Justin Herbert-style offense where he is really trying to find where to place the ball and forcing that in at times, and will deal with the interceptions, which he doesn't do a lot of them when he's not injured, and then scrambling off of that. Like, think about Joe Burrow when he uses his legs. Like, there's something to the design run plays for the Ravens that Greg Roman has leaned on too much with Lamar that has made the entire offense worse. I think it's made Lamar worse.
Yeah, I think anytime in the NFL you're too much of one thing, defenses in this league, to your point, and we saw that originally one of their first playoff runs, I think when they played the Chargers, and they put 7 DBs on the field, and they dropped back and dared them. Like, when you're too much of one thing, especially in the postseason, it becomes really easy for these high-level defenses and the coordinators that live and breathe this to go ahead and stop that. So that'll be the charge, to be as multifaceted as you pointed out the 2019 season was, and try and build that into a more consistent portion of this. The other move that was made, Brandon, Byron Leftwich fired, among many changes made by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They fired Byron Leftwich, who was their offensive coordinator and former quarterbacks coach. They also have parted ways with specialist Chris Bonial, wide receivers coach Kevin Garver, offensive quality control coach Jeff Castle, assistant D-line coach Lori Locust, and running backs coach Todd McNair, quarterbacks coach Clyde Christensen, senior offensive analyst Rick Christoffel, and outside linebackers coach Bob Sanders have decided to retire. So it's a total overhaul in Tampa, which does seem really interesting. One, I mean, this is probably Todd Bowles also a little bit worried about his job security going forward, right? A man who's gotten another opportunity at this head coaching thing in the NFL knows how precious that is, and let's call it for what it is, especially for minority candidates. And so one of the things that you do is show you're willing to make wholesale changes on this staff, especially when the offense is the easy scapegoat this year. You can point to, obviously, a lot of injury, but the production just was not there. And for a team that's probably trying to create its package to sell to Tom Brady, to say, hey, if you want to come back, we're going to let you be a part of that process like they talked about with Lamar Jackson. We're going to make sure we do this to give you the absolute best opportunity to capitalize on what could be your last couple of years, because now Tom's an unrestricted free agent.
Yeah, I hope that Tom is putting his GM hat on a little bit and putting his commentator Fox job to the side and helping with this offense a little bit, Mike. But this tenure for Todd Bowles was supposed to take the stink out of our mouths and minds of his tenure as head coach with the Jets when Geno was out there and everything that happened there. And it did not. It reminded us of that, unfortunately. And I, like I said, talking about blame and who to divvy it out to, I don't know if him controlling all these variables is going to bode well for him in the same way that I am uncertain that Lamar Jackson choosing or helping handpick that offensive coordinator for the Ravens is going to bode well when it doesn't look good and it's 15 weeks into the next season, you know?
Yeah, well, and I don't think in any situation now Tom Brady would probably have a lot more control in a situation, even though, again, unrestricted free agent. So he's not someone that's under contract in the ways that, you know, if Lamar Jackson gets the franchise tag or if they sign him to an extension, he would be. But certainly Tom Brady at this point, you could expect to have a little bit more sway in what might go on in any particular building. But Todd Bowles, it's an interesting case there, because you're right. That was what we all expected. It's also a reminder that, hey, like Todd Bowles came back down to Tampa Bay as a defensive coordinator, and we all said, hey, like the Jets, like that's an organization where nobody has fun and very few people get to succeed. And Todd came back down and he did what he has always been great at, coordinating defense. Came down there and coached the hell out of these guys, had them trending as a top 5 unit before Tom Brady got down to Tampa Bay.
Got him to the Super Bowl.
Exactly.
And won it.
No, won it, and we all saw that game on the backs of a defensive line that went out and feasted on the carcass of what was left of Kansas City's offensive line. So, incredibly important hire for this team at whatever juncture they're at right now, because we talked about this with the Rams this offseason and the injuries they dealt with being too much to even get them close to the postseason there. Most of their pivotal players sidelined by the back half of the season: Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Aaron Donald. But for Tampa, you had rampant injuries at key positions. You're on the cusp of potentially losing Tom Brady right now. And, Chris Godwin was just coming off of injury this last year. Mike Evans and Tom Brady looked like they were on completely different pages for a lot of the years. So you do wonder, if Tom Brady does choose to leave, what the cliff looks like for that organization, or do they become a destination for another free agent quarterback, as we get ready to have the Derek Carr conversations. I saw his brother cryptically tease this in like a podcast appearance, that there's apparently a trade on the table for Derek that he's got to okay. So,
ooh, okay. Well, I was just looking at this because it's so much of an overhaul. Where the Bucs drafted in the next round, 19th, which isn't terrible considering the quarterbacks that are out there and the talent that's in this next draft. Like, there's a possibility that they can just aggressively rebuild, and we get reminded, because let's be real. There was a time where the Bucs were very much irrelevant, and in between those times, they win a Super Bowl. But I don't know if Todd Bowles is the guy to rebuild this ship.
Yeah, or if this roster is going to be in a place to do it. It's, certainly an interesting mix. It got younger in certain areas defensively. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka coming on as one of their better pass rushers here. Devin White's not that old. Levante David, a little bit more. Antoine Winfield Jr.
though, like they have younger. Yeah, they're talented, but
They are. It'll be interesting, but again, I'd imagine plan A for them is always going to be get Tom Brady back in the building. You were a playoff team this year with all of the injuries that you suffered, still managed to be productive in certain ways in that passing game, even if it wasn't consistent enough for anyone's liking. And the defense did perform, especially towards the end of the year, a lot better, especially up front. So I think you've got to take that wild swing there. And, what quarter, we'll wait and see. I'm not the one to do the list of coordinators they might potentially go after here. But Brandon, speaking of trying to just match up quarterback to coordinator that they like, worth noting on the back end that Bill O'Brien did interview for the Patriots offensive coordinator job because time is a flat circle. And you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself go to Nick Saban's school for wayward boys and come out on the other side.
But what about the wayward boys that Bill Belichick's got over there, including his son? Like, not that they're not doing a great job.
Well, his son's on the defensive side. Like, nobody on the defensive side really has to answer for shit after this season. Like, they can all, I'd imagine, walk into the offseason feeling very good about the job that they did on that side of the ball. Everyone's just looking sideways at the offense, and Bill O'Brien was there before because time is a flat circle, and also Coach Mac Jones at Alabama. So he checks a lot of the boxes that I'm sure Bill Belichick would enjoy in the comfort of his New England home.
You know what? Bill O'Brien's nasty. You know what he's looking at? He think he can really, really repeat history. He want to try to be a Texans head coach again. He knows it's all crazy over there. He's like, I got 1 year to be OC with the Patriots. Let's see if I can run this shit back with the Texans. I'm going to call DeAndre Hopkins.
I love the idea of Bill O'Brien just existing in perpetuity in one giant coaching circle where he just goes from New England to Houston to, I think Bill O'Brien, he had to stop at Penn State before that, somewhere in the circle too.
Was he a quarterback coach for one of the...
No, he was the head coach at Penn State.
What? Bill O'Brien, head coach at Penn State? When did that happen?
Hold on
Before
one
James
second.
Franklin?
Yeah, he was the head coach at Penn State before he got to Houston. He was there from 2012 to 2013. So we would need James Franklin, who just the other offseason used the potential interest from some of those open jobs to garner another contract extension, and has done pretty well at Penn State this last year. Basically just lost to Michigan and Ohio State, which take a number and get in line on that one. So the Bill O'Brien circle would have to be New England, Penn State, Houston, and then Alabama, and to just keep going circularly in that order. Honestly, the break in the chain would be how much longer Nick Saban keeps doing this, if you can get back, or if it becomes Kirby Smart School for wayward boys at Georgia, and that just occupies the spot.
When you say doing this, you mean taking back people or coaching in general?
Coaching in general.
Yeah.
Which, as I say that, we all saw how David Pollack pissed him off, saying it was Georgia's league right now on that college football set at the national title. So here's to Nick Saban probably doing this forever and making us all hurt real, real bad. Brandon, let's get away from coaching news and get to the actual football getting played this weekend. Very excited about these matchups coming up. The divisional round, awesome one. Still have 4 games spread out over the weekend. Not quite the 3-day slate we had last Sunday that felt like a freaking eternity. A good eternity. One I will miss dearly, but an eternity nonetheless. So let's start off with Jags-Chiefs. It's the Saturday 4:30 p.m. Eastern game. The Chiefs come into this one 8.5-point favorites with the over-under set at 53, according to DraftKings Sportsbook. Brandon, this one, no real weather expected. Some light rain maybe in the forecast here. The Jags coming off one of the best comebacks that we've ever seen in the wild card round, and the Chiefs, that first round bye that comes with being the 1 seed in the expanded playoffs.
Hey, Heat versus Russ, baby. It's the Heat versus Russ game.
And you know what? Every sign in the world in this one points to this being a Jags cover game. The Chiefs historically, as in this position, have not fared really well. I think I saw this on ESPN.com here, And I'll give it to you like this. Since 2020, Kansas City is 12-18 against the spread as a favorite of 7 or more points. Since 2006, one seeds are 4-9-1 against the spread in divisional games where they're favored by more than a touchdown. Kansas City is 1-4 against the spread off a bye, including the playoffs since 2020. And Jacksonville is 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 games. Like, everything about this is screaming towards a Jags cover. And honestly, a lot of that made me want to zag at first before I remembered that this is just not a Chiefs team in this year that by and large blows people out. Yeah, like, that's not really been how they've operated this season.
Even though Travis Kelce's put up career numbers and it seems to be a lot of people with the nose from the end for the end zone at this point in time, especially Patrick Mahomes. But it's something about that defense that's not stopping people that they used to be able to do a little bit more, Mike.
And worth noting, Kansas City did beat them by 10 in the regular season when they played. That was a 27-17 win for Kansas City. So this is a rematch too.
You're talking about zigging and zagging, Mike, because we're going to get to our picks, but that Chiefs minus 8.5 is just way too attractive, especially against that Jag, especially with Trevor Lawrence being listed as questionable.
But now. He's been dealing with that toe questionable designation for a while now, too, so I wouldn't read too much into that. He didn't have any trouble moving around last week in that game, didn't take any demonstrable shots there that we can remember, so I'm not too worried about that.
What do you mean? That toe led to 4 interceptions in the first half.
I don't know if I'm gonna put on the toe. Like, I don't know if that's like a plant. Are you going like QB school plant mechanics here?
Absolutely. I don't know where he was grinding. I don't know if he was really pushing through and twisting the hips. But yes, I love the Jaguars right now. I really, really do. And with a lot of these picks, and we'll get to it, it's a lot of heart in it. It's a lot of heart in it because that's what I love about playoff football is like. It's that individual matchup, and that's game, and the individual matchups in that individual matchup.
Yeah, I am very curious to see a couple of things in this one. For the Jag side of things and where they could look to potentially get over on this, the Chiefs' red zone defense, 31st in red zone efficiency, not great. Man. The Jags are only 20th in red zone touchdown percentage, though. And as we say all the time against a team like the Chiefs, can't be settling for field goals when you get down there. So can the Jags do that? And then defensively for Kansas City, we all know what Spags wants to do. Wants to heat people up. Like when push comes to shoves, Steve Spagnuolo cannot help himself and wants to send pressure. And while the number 1 QBR against pressure in the NFL against the blitz in the NFL belongs to Patrick Mahomes, number 6 is Trevor Lawrence. Has not been bad. Wow. So the Chiefs are 9th in snaps of blitzes in the NFL this season. And we know that's just Spag's identity. And we've seen it burn them, like when they played the Bengals last year at the end of the regular season, I believe. I don't think that was the playoff game, but the end of the regular season where he left them on an island with those guys one-on-one. I just feel like that's one of the areas where Trevor Lawrence could certainly try and have some success.
Will he, though?
I think he will. Like, I understand the turnover concerns coming off last week, but 4 turnovers, 4 interceptions and a half, 5 turnovers overall. That's an unsustainable. To me, that's an aberration. Like, there's regression to the mean that I think is going to happen. I think Doug Peterson and the mettle that he brings into this as a coach with Super Bowl experience, let alone playoff experience, like Andy Reid on the other side. Like, these are 2 guys, a lot of familiarity, a ton of respect between them, but Doug Peterson certainly going to have that group ready for that. The other thing I worry about on the other side is the Jags, one of the worst teams at defending the tight end in the NFL. You can go back and see that in the last few games here, and you're getting ready to go up against the tight end in the NFL and Travis Kelce. And in general, a Chiefs team that's used a lot of multiple tight end sets this season has used more 13. I think I saw they've used more 13 personnel snaps this year, so 3 tight ends on the field, at least during the regular season, than they did in every other year of Mahomes' tenure as a starter in Kansas City combined. Like, they have totally, in that way, remade a lot of this team after letting Tyreek Hill walk this offseason.
I mean, they got a lot of body types, and all the moves they made at wide receiver this past year after having to get rid of Tyreek Hill, I mean, it's boded well for them. Like, you say the 13 personnel, and I'm imagining, is it McKinnon in the backfield who Aubrey dropped that stat? He's got the most he broke the record for pass receptions or touchdown receptions in a game consecutively. Like, they have a lot of weapons coming in and out of the backfield, but they always have, because Patrick Mahomes does whatever with whoever. But the Jags are they're going to be a tough out. They're going to be a tough out, but I can't see the Chiefs playing with their food too much. But that line is crazy, Mike, and I'm afraid of it now.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go Jags plus 8.5 on this one. Again, I've gotten used to this Kansas City team winning closer, and I think coming off the bye, there's part of me that thinks Kansas City comes out and sets a tone, but I just think right now Jacksonville can stick with them, move the ball on offense. Kansas City is not as explosive as they've always been. They're certainly as productive, and there's a million of deep stats that let you know that offense has been great, but I'll go Jags plus 8.5 in that one. Let's go to the Saturday night game. Giants versus Eagles. Nice division matchup on the divisional weekend. 8:15 Eastern. Eagles minus 7.5 in this game. Over under at 48 on this one. And Brandon, you want to talk about hotter than fish grease right now. The Giants coming off that win last week. Everyone's talking about Daniel Jones getting his shiny new contract. You love Saquon Barkley and his neck roll in here.
Yes.
How do you feel about the potential upset bid here?
Oh, it's happening.
Oh, you're going outright.
I would lock. I a lot of these I wanted to do money line just because it feels safer. But yeah, I like the Giants in this game. And not to say that the Eagles are shit the bed, but this is the time where the better roster loses. And we have to make way for that. Is it? Yes, absolutely. Because guess what? Somebody gets banged up, and they're like, okay, we are accounting to use A.J. Brown this entire time. Jalen Hurts, I haven't seen him play in too long. Maybe it's that's going on in my own head. Like, I forgot just how effective he was, even though he was, not in the MVP conversation, but was leading the NFL in touchdowns. Him and Josh Allen were kind of going back and forth all season long. But it's just been too long. And I don't know if he can just turn it on like that. I think he benefits from the reps.
I think he benefits from the rest. I think this whole Eagles team was a poster child for just needing that extra week that they got being the 1 seed here. We talked about Lane Johnson dealing with the abdominal tear that kept him out late in the season. Certainly Jalen Hurts, who came back in week 18 to make sure that they got the 1 seed. And on defense, CJ Gardner-Johnson had been banged up. I think Avonte Maddox also. Like, they needed plenty of guys who needed to go and get treatment and get off their legs a little bit and got the chance to do so. And I just think, again, what we saw with the Giants last week was awesome. That was a closely contested game against a Minnesota team that we talked about all year long. In most areas of their roster was either average to below average on offense outside of Justin Jefferson, or just flat out not good on defense. Ed Donatel, by the way, their defensive coordinator, also shown the door this last week. This Eagles team, everywhere you look, is better than that. And I understand defensively it hasn't always been perfect this year, especially rush defense, where they're still better statistically than the Giants on rush defense, by the way, and have gotten healthier as the season's gone along there. But even with all that, it's just in so many ways built like the Giants roster, but just with better talent, especially at the skill positions on offense. And I think that's where the biggest difference comes, right? Jalen Hurts, who's had a week to heal up, who they kept on especially a pitch count for rushing attempts in that week 18 matchup, is probably going to be turned loose a little bit more, and certainly can be at the helm of a passing offense that I think is going to be more than the Giants can handle.
Well, the irony about the Giants is they're traditionally small and pound for pound less talented than the teams that they end up going out there and beating. And that's why this has been a story. It's not just Brian Daboll being a first-time head coach, is that no one expected this roster to do what it's done. And I don't think they're done doing that yet. Like, I feel like the Eagles we knew this was coming. We knew this trend was coming. We knew this trend was coming in Vegas when that A.J. Brown trade went through. And this is what we've seen all season long from him, Devontae Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner. Like, yes, the Eagles have been doing what they're supposed to be doing during the regular season, but it's not that Nick Foles, Doug Peterson, like, special story. Like, all those defensive linemen that they picked up, they're struggling to stay on the field a lot of times. Like, I don't know if the answers are there for them, where I think the Giants are as hot as fish grease, and people should be afraid to play them.
They should. Listen, I think the Giants have earned a ton of respect through this season. We've talked about Brian Daboll. We believe Daniel Jones is now going to be their quarterback of the future, at least the near future here. Saquon Barkley, going to be very interesting contractually for him this offseason also.
Ooh, who gets more rushing yards, Jalen Hurts or Daniel Jones? That wins the game for me, and I think Daniel Jones does, because he's just a crazy mofo.
Yeah, listen, and we talked to Ben Solak on this podcast, who obviously does a great job podcasting about the Eagles and breaking down film over at The Ringer. That's an Eagles defense that has times been masters of the obvious, right? Obvious run sets, putting 5 bodies up at the line of scrimmage, lightening up without that. They've gotten healthier in the middle as well, with Jordan Davis getting back out there. But Brandon, I think on the other side, one of the areas I still have concern about is because, again, the Giants were getting whatever they wanted on the ground last week. They got all that stuff. The Eagles' rush defense statistically better than the Giants' rush defense. And then on third down, that's really where the matchup becomes, because the Giants are 22nd on third down conversion in the NFL, and the Eagles lead the NFL with 32 sacks on third down this season, 8 more than the second place team. They have been blitzing people, rushing the passer all season long here. And I saw this that was interesting. The Giants have more third and medium snaps than the second most third and medium snaps in the NFL. So between 4 and 6 yards, which is where you can start to turn the pass rushers loose a little bit, especially towards that 6-yard range. And the Giants still not great in converting at third and medium, where they spend a lot of their time. So I think this Eagles pass rush has a chance to make this ugly. You got to get Daniel Jones on the ground, and we know that's a tough task. Big guy. Right. I'm going to take the Eagles to cover. I'm going to take the Eagles minus 7.5 on this one. I think it's late. I think the Giants, who have been cover kings all year long, like if you wanted to rock with them, 14-4 against the spread this season. Every reason to believe the Giants can do that, but I think this Eagles team that certainly was banged up down the stretch of the season, when we talk about rest versus rust, needed the rest more than most people and are going to come back out here, especially if Lane Johnson, who does not carry an injury designation going into this game, was a full participant in their last practice. If he's really healthy enough to go like that, and we'll wait and see, that's a huge difference maker on what's likely the best offensive line left in this postseason.
But they got them players over there, Giant. Like, Dexter Lawrence is not to be messed with, Mike. And we didn't mention the fact that these are, like, in-division foes and rivalries. Like, these teams know each other very well, and therefore they could, like, secretly have someone's number. Like, there's just too much history right here. And it's a big game. It's an important game. And, damn, the NFC East looks good.
I know. It's gonna be exciting, man. We expect that one to be a knockdown, drag out. I think the Giants are at least a year away from being the best version of themselves. I think that's a next year conversation with that team as they start to get more in the cavalry on defense and add more to the skill position cabinet on offense, even though a lot of these guys that have come in and stepped up have done really well. So you've got the Giants winning outright in that game. I've got the Eagles minus 7.5 in that game. So we are total opposites there. Very excited to watch this weekend. Bengals at Bills, Sunday 3 p.m. Eastern game. The Bills minus 5.5 in this game. Supposed to be temps in the low 30s. Very little chance of precipitation, so none of the fun theatrical snow stuff that people enjoy out of Buffalo coming out of there. Brandon, this one's interesting because the Bengals, a lot of people are looking at it and seeing the O-line stuff. Jonah Williams, their left tackle, who went down with an injury, a dislocated kneecap in their last game, and look at that and say, all right, you were already down 2 starters on the right side of your offensive line in your right tackle and right guard, and now you've got this injury here. I'm still a little nervous because if anyone knows how to deal with that shit, it's Joe Burrow. The guy got hit more than anybody in the league last year, and they still went to the bleeping Super Bowl, played behind basically an offensive line that unfortunately was just not getting the job done at all and was still lethal. So it's not like I can count this guy out all of a sudden when this happens late in the game.
We can talk about Josh Allen's turnovers, Mike, but that Bills defense looks porous recently. Like holes, and they're getting exploited, and Joe Burrow is the perfect person to keep them on their heels, honestly.
Yeah, listen, I think the Bills' defense, to their defense, the defense's defense. I think to stick up for the Bills' defense last week, so much of what went on was the result of Bills' turnovers on offense, right? Between the interceptions thrown and then Josh Allen, the fumble that was returned for a touchdown. Like, remember, when things really, went haywire later on in that game, it was the backed up pass from Skylar Thompson that the Bills defense intercepted and put them in great position. Like, I think those guys stepped up. It is just going to be fascinating because part of the equation and conversation around Buffalo in the postseason was Von Miller. And I went back and looked since week 12 when Von Miller went down, I believe, in that game. I forget who it was against specifically, but since week 12, they're 23rd in the NFL in sacks and 24th in sacks per drop back, but they are still 8th in pass rush win rate. So they're beating their blocker in under 2.5 seconds. Usually those pressure statistics a little more indicative of how you're doing there. So if there's going to be a get right game for this Bills defense, especially as pass rushers, this is going to be the one. And with Joe, you have to take him down. This cannot be a thing where you let him squirm out of there because we've seen him make the miracle plays time and time again and overcome that whole O-line versus receiver meme that he was a part of around the draft.
Yes, but when you mentioned the Giants being 1 year away, I thought about the Bengals last year. Right?
Yeah, but they don't have the complement, I think, to go along with it, right? Like, you had a quarterback that was certainly playing great ball, but the Bengals then had two incredible wide receivers who were stepping up. T. Higgins, you had that going on, which maybe you could say Saquon Barkley in what they've done in the backfield, but I just don't know if that's enough in the modern NFL in that way.
Mina Kimes was tweeting about the DC over there. The Bengals needs to
Big
give a little
Lou
bit more credit. Yeah, I mean...
Well, and that's the other part of this, Brandon, that I think about is what we saw with Buffalo, too, was the Miami Dolphins make a very decided effort, right? We're going to go and we're going to send pressure, make Josh uncomfortable, live and die with big plays, and see what happens. And it benefited them for a long time in that game. And Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator for the Bengals, was a big part of the story of that team's playoff run last year. And I think with the guys you got up front, we saw Sam Hubbard make the big play last week, Trey Hendrickson, obviously a guy that's feared as a rusher, but DJ Reader up and down. We talked earlier in the season, one of the more underrated D-lines in the NFL. And so if they decide, hey, we're going to try and sell out and send pressure too, and say, yeah, listen, on the back, we've seen Eli Apple get burned plenty. And so that's definitely a concern against Stephon Diggs and the wide receiver core for the Buffalo Bills. But that might be how you have to play this Bills team. And so maybe early on we see them try and mimic that, since Lou is a really capable D coordinator.
Giants fans had a field day with that shit. Watching Eli Apple get burnt.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. So, Brandon, I would say this. I believe Buffalo is going to win this game. However, Bengals plus 5.5. I think it's just me buying into the Joe Burrow magic. Maybe we'll find its limits, and maybe the timing of these O-line injuries being as late in the season as they are, and what he got used to. Because I think for a while during the season, we saw Joe get really comfortable in the pocket, be able to hang around in there a lot more, take the checkdowns that were there later in the play clock as things went along, because he was getting better protection as the season went along. Maybe if that capsizes now, because they're not a great rushing team by any stretch of the imagination, maybe as that goes down, we finally see that come to its limits. I'm going to go Bengals plus 5.5 in this one. 8-0 against the spread in their last 8 games as an underdog here. I think they got another shot. Yeah.
I hear you, Mike, but I just feel like it's not only a tune-up game for the Bills. I feel like it's a get-right game for Josh Allen. And that offense that is struggled to be really consistent when they needed him. Cole Beasley still isn't vaccinated. I think they're dangerous over there. I'm expecting multiple touchdowns from at least one of their pass catchers, Knox or Diggs, and Diggs when he gets passionate and gets that offense fired up. I think they're thirsty for a Super Bowl appearance, and I don't think they're gonna allow the Bengals to stop them. And I I think they're going to do it handily, at least one touchdown. So I like the Bills minus 5.5.
I know we talk about the defensive strategy too. I want to say the Bengals were one of the teams last year that also did what a lot of teams were doing against the Chiefs and the Bills, and that was just take away the deep stuff from them and force them to keep it underneath. And we have seen it time. We'll see if that's enough to frustrate Josh and these guys. I think as much as anything, this is a bet on the Bengals' defensive side of the ball being able to kind of mimic that sort of performance. We know certainly last week was a bit of a rock fight also, and they came out on the other side of that one. So markedly different challenge. I'll go Bengals plus 5.5 on that one. But even going in the weekend, I said that might have been the upset play, but this is also one of those spots where I had the looming specter of that Chiefs and Bucs Super Bowl in my mind, where it's like, all right, I had a lot of blind faith in Patrick Mahomes in that game. I said, man, that quarterback's good enough to overcome most things. And that amount of O-line injuries finally came up and caught up to them and was enough. And that's my worry here.
Oh yeah, I'm after that game, I've been doing a lot more research and focusing on offensive lines going into Super Bowls or going in any of these playoff games, because that was egregious. And yeah, if you have a deficiency like that, then the defense that's in that same position against you is going to send everything that way.
Oh man! All right, I'm gonna think on this one until we get to the end of the podcast here, because
really,
it's got me shook, man. It's got me shook. Cowboys at 49ers is the 6:30 Eastern game on Sunday. 49ers minus 3.5, over under of 46. Temperatures mid-50s in this one. Brandon, this to me is the most comfortable I feel about a pick. I'm going 49ers minus 3.5 in this game. I think the Cowboys did everything they needed to do in that last game. Defense showed up big time. They were stubborn to a fault, or not even to a fault. They were stubborn with the run. They are not a hyper-efficient run team, but they stuck with it. They kept hammering away at that. They made sure that it was a balanced game plan, so you didn't have Dak airing it out, putting the ball in harm's way too many times. Dak played one of his best games, and that included as a runner using his legs. All great things. All things that I do not think work nearly as well against this 49ers defense, because they're just great pretty much everywhere.
Okay, because the line on DraftKings Sportsbook has moved to 4, do you want to change that pick? Does that half point make a difference?
Listen, I got it at 3.5. I'll go with the honor system of what it is at the time that we're making these picks.
Okay.
And I'll say, yes, I will still take the 49ers minus 4 in this game. I don't know. I just think, too, when you look at the calling card for this Dallas team is defense, right? As great as Dak played in that last game, and certainly that's going to have to be a huge part of it again, hitting all those weapons if they want to win this one. I think in the last game, it was the Cowboys defense just completely unearthing Tom Brady, frustrating him at every turn, living in the backfield, batting balls down. It felt like Micah Parsons was all over him. If there is any coordinator on earth I trust to go out and try and frustrate Micah Parsons and make sure he is never getting clean looks at the quarterback and that things are constantly moving east and west and he's always got to be worried about where the next chip or hit is coming from or which of these guys in the backfield could be getting the ball and going in the opposite direction, it's Kyle Shanahan, and it's the weapons on that offense.
Yeah, but on the other side of that, if there's one defensive coordinator who is laser focused on making a mystery relevant quarterback who's really feeling himself second guess just how ready he is from the NFL, I feel like it's Dan Quinn, especially with those weapons that he has over there on defense. I just feel like he can make Brock Purdy see things that aren't there, and they can capitalize on them in a lot of ways with that Cowboys defense. And also, what was the stat? It was on Dan Le Batard. It was Tom Brady's entire career plus Carson Wentz's entire career combined the last time the Cowboys had a road playoff win. The fact that this happened, I'm not going to just say the Bucs are trash and that's why they were able to make that happen. The Cowboys look different, and I'm not giving the credit to Mike McCarthy, Kellen Moore and his poor face, but this seems like the team is ready. And honestly, I might just say Tony Pollard is the reason. The same way I'm just so gung-ho in the Giants because I see a shiny running back in the playoffs like Saquon Barkley. Like, Tony Pollard, backed up by Ezekiel Elliott, is dangerous enough for me to pick them against a lot of teams. But I know the 49ers on defense is the problem, but still.
I think it is interesting to think about Dan Quinn and Kyle Shanahan, who know each other incredibly well from their time in Atlanta. I mean, those are two guys that have squared off in practice plenty. Now, Dan Quinn was the head coach at that point, and Kyle was the offensive coordinator for that Super Bowl run, but
now I'm thinking about Kellen Moore versus was it DeMarcus Ware? Not DeMarcus Ware, I'm sorry. DeMeco Ryans.
Yeah.
Like that. Oh my gosh, that's racist. They kind of look the same. But
Brandon Newman said that, not Mike Golick Jr.
Between that matchup, Mike, you gotta go with the 49ers.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. DeMeco Ryans, who, speaking of Ben Solak, who we talked about, wrote a phenomenal piece on DeMeco Ryans and all of the people that have been a part of his football career who have basically said, I think it was Chip Kelly's like, I won't be surprised when DeMeco Ryans is president one day. He has been on the fast track to where he's going as a head coach this next season since the beginning of his football career, it sounds like.
And as smart as he's been all season, the fact that he, and correct me if I'm wrong, decided not to take any interview with the Colts, like for the Colts head job. Did you see that?
I did not see that. No.
Did you see him?
It would be smart for him to not go and hitch his wagon to the Colts right now because he's going to have, I think, much better opportunities than that because he's DeMeco Ryans.
You know, it wasn't the Colts. It was the Texans. It was the other. Yeah, no. It was the Texans job. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
He's like, I'm not going to go. You see what you guys do with those black head coaches? Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, hard pass on that one. I'm not going to deal with that dumpster fire. So smart move by him. Yes, and I think I saw this stat on ESPN.com with Brock Purdy on the field. San Francisco averages 0.19 expected points added per play. So every play, how much that goes towards scoring. Yeah. The Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes average 0.18. Like, that's how good the offense has been since Brock Purdy took over with him. And we've talked about it. It's a complicated process that gets us to that point, but they have been incredibly productive. And the Cowboys defense, while they do defend tight ends very well statistically, they give up a lot of yards to wide receivers and running backs. 24th in the league in yards per attempt to running backs, 21st in net yards per attempt to wide receivers. This ain't the team, especially this year, now that Brandon Ayuk's come online too, along with Deebo Samuel and that dude Christian McCaffrey. That ain't where you want to be when Jesus comes back, playing defense like that against those positions. Like, we know on the other side, the non-Trevon Diggs versions of the Dallas Cowboys secondary can be had, and this is an offense that certainly is going to take those opportunities in droves.
Yeah, I think I may be being too commercialism, or I may be drinking the Cowboys Kool-Aid too much. Like, the 49ers are a better football team, regardless of how hot the Cowboys looked against Tom Brady. Yeah, maybe this is a Tom Brady effect thing. Get the 49ers. I gotta switch that. I had the Cowboys +4, and that's where my heart is, but ain't no way they beat the 49ers.
Ain't no telling, Brandon.
No, I'm telling you, ain't no way they beat the 49ers.
No, I'm with you on that one. I'm firmly in 49ers -3.5 or -4 now on there. It's such a complete team right now. It might be the most complete team in football, especially if Brock Purdy can keep playing like this. And we know he's a rookie. He's the last pick in the draft. He's all these things that he's been, but he's played a lot of football already this season. And you and I always remember there was that point like 7 games into every college season where the coach would say, hey, if you've been playing all this time, you're not a freshman anymore. Like, we expect you to show up and play. And for rookies, we hear about the rookie wall and stuff all the time like that. But at this point, Brock Purdy, who came out last game, didn't start great, finished pretty strong. That says something about a young player coming into his first postseason start like that too. I can't bet against this 49ers team right now, and I won't.
That win streak has to stop at some point. It's not going to go to the Super Bowl. So I am going to go back immediately. Where Cowboys +4, baby.
Wow, Cowboys +4. All right. So you waffled on that one a little bit. I waffled on the Bengals and Bills pick going into this weekend. I'm I'm still so torn just because of how close the Skylar Thompson-led Miami Dolphins were able to take this thing. And I understand like part of that's a Mike McDaniel conversation also. So you know what? I'll stick with Bengals plus 5.5. And if I get burned again on this one, I have no one to blame but myself because I told myself I would learn from that Kansas City football. I told myself that offensive lines would matter to me and should matter to me. And damn it, this oof.
I will say this. We got the quarterbacks. We got the numbers. Like, this is an exciting, and I know quarterbacks don't play each other, but as terrible as defenses have traditionally been in the NFL recently or as of late, this shit's gonna be fun.
It is. It's gonna be really fun. It's gonna be really fun, Brandon.
That filibustering didn't help you get to the answer quicker?
No, it didn't.
You already said it.
I know. I need to stick with it. I'm going to stick with it now.
You like the Bengals? Yeah, we got to.
I'm going to stick with it now. Again, I'm not going to feel good about it, but I'm going to do it. Yeah. So, to recap, going through the picks for the weekend before we get to this, that, and the third, I got Jags plus 8.5. I got Eagles minus 7.5. I got Bengals plus 5.5, and I got 49ers minus 3.5. So I got 2 underdogs and 2 favorites going into the weekend. Brandon, what are yours again?
I had Chiefs minus 8.5, but I'm not doing it anymore. Thank you for asking so I can switch it. Jags plus 8.5, Giants money line, Bills minus 5.5, Cowboys plus 4.
All right, that's right. 49ers minus 4. I'll go by the honor system there, but I believe it to my core here. Reminder for the season: Brandon Newman, new picks 15-14 on the year, so winning record over on Brandon's side there.
Hey.
That's what he's got. Me, 55, 62-4. Not nearly as cute. Wild card weekend ended up going 3-3. So we have not been below 500 on my side, I will say, since week 11. So not nothing.
Hey.
Not nothing, but not something.
Talking about people heating up.
Early season hole.
Okay.
We've been better as of late. We'll see if we can keep it going. Brandon, we'll see if we can land the plane on this side and get ready for divisional weekend by asking the important question on everybody's mind. Do you know what time it is? A lot of output effort there. You had to muster up a lot of wind strength, and for that alone, I respect it. If you respect it, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review Gojo wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Tell Brandon what a great job he continues to do on this, that, and the third. By the way, Brandon, you gave me time to reconsider it even more. I'm taking the Bills minus 5.5. I can't. Brandon, I can't do it. At some point, being down 3 starting offensive linemen has to mean something. It has to matter. And I think they're going to be down all 3 with Jonah Williams, Alex Kappa, Lil Collins. You can't win a playoff football game at this round like that. You just can't do it. I can't believe it's possible. I cannot deny the fat blood in my veins. I'm switching my pick before we start this, that, and the third.
Well, Mike, I have one rule. We can't be saying picked it. So I'm going Bengals plus 5.5 now.
There you go. Listen, I will, Brandon, assuredly be wrong, but I can sleep better at night knowing I stuck to my morals and that the promise I made to myself after that Super Bowl is a promise I kept, and that matters a lot more to me than winning this money, which is dumb and it shouldn't, but it does, so it will.
I'm just gonna bet on the Queen City, the closest city in this whole thing to Louisville, Kentucky. I'll call it a hometown pick. How about that?
There we go. Perfect. Both of us going with our guts on this one, literally and metaphorically. Brandon, let's get to this, and let's stick with the hometown flavor for the two of us here. It was announced yesterday by the university that Notre Dame head men's basketball coach Mike Brey will be stepping down after the 2022-23 season. Mike Brey, who took over in the year 2000, Y2K Mike Brey, has compiled 481 victories at Notre Dame. That includes, during his time there, a run in the runs in the NCAA tournament that have produced some impressive result. He made the tournament 13 times, had 15 victories in the tournament, was the only school in the nation to earn back-to-back Elite Eight runs in 2015, 2016. Shout out to Jerry and Grant and Pat Connaughton Studs leading that squad. What a fun time that was. But Brandon, Maui Mike Brey, the often shirtless wonder at the Maui Invitational, going to be stepping down, man. He's been one of the fixtures at Notre Dame for as long as we can remember. And while the men's basketball program has never really matched the heights of the women's basketball program in South Bend and what they've done, it's produced some fun along the way. Obviously, last season was an awesome year. Notre Dame's first, one and done player in school history. Lots to be proud of. I hope Mike Brey gets his flowers on the way out because that's been one of the fixtures there in my Notre Dame fandom lifetime, and it'll be very weird to see somebody else at the helm for a while. That school, who really, when you think of the men's basketball coaches, it's Digger Phelps and Mike Brey are the two names that rise to the top that people are going to talk about. And
there hasn't been really a lot of turnover with basketball coaches at Notre Dame, period.
No.
Obviously, Muffet McGraw coming. This is one of her first seasons not at the helm for the women's side. So I'm interested in what he does afterwards because Digger made it such a staple around Notre Dame that there's big shoes to fill as a former head basketball coach at Notre Dame. Remember, Digger would just run around the dining halls and just be in all of our ears and spitting in our food, just trying to telling us to go to the Syracuse game.
Digger's still always walking around the lakes at Notre Dame. You see him at the Martin's Side Door Deli near campus all the time. Obviously, he was a commentator for a long time on ESPN. Used to always match the highlighter with the tie and stuff. But he's a South Bend staple, kind of like Tony Rice around there.
Oh man, legend.
Yeah,
legend. And Chris Orch.
So, congratulations to Mike Brey. We will always have those shirtless pictures of him at the Maui Invitational. Brandon, let's get to that. But by the way, actually, I should say this before we do depart the Mike Brey thing, because I just remembered this. And Mike Brey reminded me of this this last summer. Jordan Cornette, who has a charity golf tournament every year in honor of his late brother, had a lot of the Notre Dame basketball alums, Jordan, a proud Notre Dame hoops alum under Mike Brey. And Mike Brey came out there and reminded me of a story. So when I was a kid at Notre Dame, one year, I used to always go to the Notre Dame football camps as a middle schooler. And one year I was like, I'll double up and I'll go to the Notre Dame football and basketball camps. And as Mike Brey reminded me after my one stint at basketball camp, he said, Mike, you going over the football camp? And I was like, yes, sir. And he goes, all right, make sure you stick with that. And as he reminded me this last summer, it was great advice, and it worked out very well for the both of us.
Oh my! Was your feet that bad at that point in time? What was going on? What do you think?
Everything was that bad.
Everything was that bad?
Yeah.
Everything was that bad? Okay.
So
good advice. Coaching up everybody.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes the best advice is knowing what you're not. And Mike Brey gave me that advice very early on in life. So
stay in your lane.
Happy trails to him. Let's get to that, Brandon. Deion Sanders, who we talked about his coaching staff making the rounds with viral internet videos, made the rounds doing what we saw him do at Jackson State. Getting big-time recruits to do their thing. He flipped five-star cornerback Kermani McLean from Miami on Thursday, giving him the first five-star commit as the Buffalo's head coach. McLean is the number 4 prospect in the ESPN class and is the highest-ranked recruit Colorado's brought in since ESPN began ranking players in 2006.
I thought he was going to say since Joe Klatt.
No. Yeah.
Cordell Stewart.
It seems like that at this point. McLean was supposed to sign in the early period in December, but then abruptly decided to wait once Sanders got hired by Colorado. And so big time, we remember he flipped that big time commit from Florida State when he was at Jackson State already. So the Deion Sanders effect, while a lot of it people look at as pomp and circumstance, already proving beneficial in the ways that Colorado's going to need if they want to overcome what is a daunting schedule for them. Did you see that come out, by the way?
I was going to bring it up because I was going to say it probably is more attractive than Notre Dame's schedule next season.
Colorado's schedule opening up at TCU, then at home versus Nebraska, at home versus Colorado State, on the road at Autzen to play Oregon, at home against USC, on the road against ASU, Stanford, at home against Stanford, and then at UCLA after the bye, Oregon State, Arizona, Washington State, on the road at Utah to end the season. The defending Pac-12 champion Utah Utes. That is a meat grinder of a schedule for year one in Deion.
Yeah, we're gonna be seeing him coach.
Yeah. Let's put it this way. If you can make a splash in that schedule, I mean, hell, if you can win 4 or 5 games on that schedule, you have been wildly successful.
Yeah, if Colorado, and this is a tall order, and I don't think anyone should expect this year one, but if he gets the Buffaloes to go bowling.
Oh, if he gets them to go bowling.
The Bahama Bowls, even.
If he gets them to go bowling, coach of the year. Right. I mean, without fail. So we'll get ready and watch, but already paying dividends early on in the early going here. Brandon, let's finish up with an important story. To finish the day, this courtesy of Now This Is News on Twitter. Pizza Hut is attempting to break a world record for the world's largest pizza. The pie, which is currently being built inside the Los Angeles Convention Center, which I will now be visiting upon my return home, will be 14,000 square feet and contain 13,000 pounds of dough, 4,900 pounds of sauce, 8,800 pounds of cheese, and serve 68,000 slices in total. Now, Brandon, Pizza Hut president Dave Graves, also said none of this is going to waste. We're going to donate to some of the local food banks here in the Los Angeles County, so we're very excited about that.
No. Oh, okay. Yes, that's good. That's good, Mike. As someone who swore off free pizza at work in 2017, that sounds gross, but I respect it, and I hope everyone enjoys. And as also someone who is on, and I haven't mentioned this yet, Mike, you know, we've been going through it. I've been talking to you about it. You alluded to it before, saying I was hungry on the podcast before. Someone who is on day 11 of a fast that allows me to have little to none of those things that you mentioned.
Oh,
it's hard to hear.
Yeah, this is deep. This is deeply personal. Totally understand that. I could see why that hurts. I will not tell you if I can break into the Los Angeles Convention Center and die eating my way through that pizza, which would be the best way I could possibly go out.
Speaking of that, our food tour in AZ is going to be. We have to make sure it's well documented, but we almost need a nice map, because I look forward to eating in a lot of delicious places with you come Super Bowl week.
Yes, we will definitely have that one on lockdown. At Gojo Show on Twitter, by the way, if there's anything that you would like to see from Super Bowl week that we can do for you guys in the coverage there, make sure you hit us in the Twitter mentions. By the way, I feel like this will be very exciting news on the pizza front for 2 coaches playing this weekend. Did you see the Nick Sirianni press conference where he said that while they were watching the Giants-Vikings game play out, they ordered Pizza Hut stuffed crust pizza because he hadn't had it in a while and everyone lost their shit. And they asked Brian Daboll about it, who hero, thick king of ours around here. Pat Leonard at the New York Daily News asked Brian Daboll if he liked stuffed crust pizza. He had no idea what I was talking about until I explained the Nick Sirianni comment. Daboll then pointed to his stomach and said, I mean...
Hey.
That man will have my sword and shield for a long time, Brandon. He gets it. He's one of us.
Yeah, he certainly is, and the way he dances lets me know he's one of us as well. But you gotta let the belly speak for itself. But I will say, my hometown, unfortunate racist Papa John, alleged, the epic stuffed crust with the pepperoni in the crust, Mike. That's a ride,
bro.
That's a ride.
Have you seen
pepperoni and cheese?
Have you seen the new Pizza Hut triple threat box?
What they do with that? Now we love it. We love a Pizza Hut box. Definitely a wild night. But what's in there?
Pizza Hut triple treat box: 2 medium, 1 topping pizzas, 5 breadsticks, and 10 Cinnabon mini rolls.
Okay, I gotta see how many the mini rolls are, but that does sound like
so.
Carb loading.
This is what I want to propose here, and I've got dibs on this right now. If any of you big networks steal this, I swear to God, I will find a way to come after you for intellectual property theft.
Okay.
Off-season sit-down interview. Me, Daboll, Sirianni, NFC East talk, Pizza Hut triple threat box. 3 guys in a room, cutting it off, talking about gritty quarterback read play fucking football.
Listen, I don't think you need much more to sell that one.
No, exactly. So we're going to figure this out again. If I see Tom Rinaldi do this offseason, I swear, and I love Tom Rinaldi, and he would do a much better job with this than me, except for the eating pizza part. I love you, Tom, but please don't make me upset here. If you support that idea, by the way, and you've listened this far, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review Gojo wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Remember that I picked the Bills -5.5 after all that waffling. If you learn nothing else on this podcast, and always make sure you check us out on the DraftKings YouTube channel under the Gojo with Mike Golick Jr. tab. Thank you so much. Enjoy the divisional round this weekend. We'll talk to you guys next week. Boom. Money in the bank.